The bell above the shop door jangled, but Julian barely heard it over the roar of his own heartbeat. He'd walked past Mathews' tailor shop 100 times in Port Haven, its quaint seaside charm a backdrop to his morning jogs. But today was different. Today he was stepping inside, and the air felt electric with possibility. What was it about a tailor's touch that made his pulse race before he'd even met the man? Julian, 28, with auburn curls and a nervous habit of adjusting his glasses, pushed open the door to a world of rich fabrics and the faint scent of cedar. The shop was a haven of order amidst Port Haven's chaotic charm. A small coastal town in Maine where lobster boats bobbed in the harbor and pride flags fluttered alongside American ones. He was here for a suit, his first custom one, for a friend's wedding. But as he stood in the doorway, clutching the appointment card, he wondered if he was chasing something else entirely. Mathews, the tailor, emerged from behind a curtain, wiping his hands on a cloth. At 32, he was broad-shouldered, with dark hair cropped close and a beard that framed a cautious smile. His gray eyes held a quiet intensity, like the calm before a storm. "You must be Julian," he said, his voice low and warm, like the tide pulling you in. "Ready to get measured?" Julian nodded, his throat tight. He'd heard about Mathews, Port Haven's straight tailor, as the locals called him, a man who crafted suits with precision but kept his personal life as guarded as a locked shop after hours. The nickname wasn't just about his profession. It was a nod to the assumptions small towns loved to make. Julian, openly gay and unapologetic, had spent years navigating those assumptions himself. Why did he feel so drawn to this man who seemed so firmly rooted in a world that didn't include him? As Mathews led him to a fitting platform, Julian noticed the details. The way Mathews' fingers moved deftly over a bolt of navy wool, the faint crease of worry between his brows, the pride flag pin discreetly tucked on his apron. "You don't strike me as a suit guy," Mathews said, unrolling a measuring tape. "What's the occasion?" "A wedding," Julian replied, stepping onto the platform. "My friend Elise. She's marrying a fisherman, and I'm the best man. I want to look worthy of the role." Mathews chuckled, a sound that felt like sunlight on water. "Worthy's a tall order, but I'll make you look sharp." He began measuring, his tape gliding over Julian's shoulders, arms, chest. Each touch was professional, precise. Yet Julian's skin tingled under the graze of Mathews' knuckles. Was it just the novelty of being measured, or was there something in the way Mathews lingered, just a fraction longer than necessary, at the curve of his waist? "Hold still," Mathews murmured, kneeling to measure Julian's inseam. Their eyes met, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. Julian's breath hitched. Mathews' hand paused, the tape trembling slightly. Then, instead of pulling away, his fingers brushed Julian's thigh. Not a measurement, but a question, soft and unspoken. Julian froze, heart hammering. What was happening? Mathews, the straight tailor, was looking at him like he'd just seen the horizon for the first time. The bell jangled again, shattering the moment. A customer bustled in, and Mathews stood quickly, his face flushed. "We'll finish this later," he said, voice clipped, as he turned to greet the newcomer. Julian stepped off the platform, dizzy, wondering if he'd imagined the spark. But as he glanced back, Mathews' eyes found his again, and the question lingered in the air, heavy as sea fog. The next week, Julian returned, telling himself it was just for the suit. But the memory of Mathews' touch burned like a brand, and Port Haven's salty air seemed to carry whispers of what might be. Why did a single moment feel like it could rewrite his entire story? The shop was quieter today, the late afternoon light casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Mathews was alone, sketching designs at his workbench, his brow furrowed in concentration. Julian hesitated at the door, watching the way Mathews' hands moved, deliberate, steady, yet capable of such unexpected tenderness. "Back for more torture?" Mathews teased, looking up with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Torture's one word for it, Julian shot back, stepping inside. He wanted to ask about that moment, to name the unspoken, but the words stuck. Instead, he climbed onto the platform again, letting Mathews resume his work. The measuring tape danced over his frame, but this time, Mathews' hands were bolder, lingering at Julian's collarbone, tracing the line of his spine. Each touch felt like a confession, and Julian's resolve crumbled. "Mathews," he said softly, "what are we doing here?" Mathews froze, the tape slipping from his fingers. He looked up, his gray eyes stormy with conflict. "I don't know," he admitted, voice raw. I'm not supposed to," he trailed off, glancing at the pride pin on his apron. A silent rebellion against the label the town had given him. Julian's heart ached at the vulnerability in his voice. What was it like to live behind a mask, even one you didn't choose? Port Haven wasn't unkind, but it was small, and small towns had long memories. Mathews had grown up here, the son of a fisherman, expected to follow a certain path. Marriage, kids, a life as predictable as the tides. Julian, an outsider who'd moved here for a quieter life after years in Boston, knew the weight of expectations. He'd fought his own battles to live openly, but Mathews was still wrestling with his. "Tell me," Julian urged, stepping closer. "What's stopping you?" Mathews exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Everyone thinks they know me. The straight tailor, the guy who fixes their suits and keeps his head down. But when I'm with you," he hesitated, then reached out, his fingers grazing Julian's wrist. "I feel like I'm waking up." The confession hung between them, fragile and electric. Julian wanted to pull him close, to bridge the gap, but the shop door opened again, and Mathews stepped back, the moment slipping away like sand. Julian left that day with a half-fitted suit and a heart full of questions. Could Mathews break free from the town's expectations? And was Julian brave enough to wait for him to try? Days turned into weeks, and the suit became an excuse for Julian to return. Each visit a dance of glances and fleeting touches. But the tension was building, like a storm gathering over the Atlantic. What happens when you want someone who's still learning to want themselves? Port Haven's annual Pride Festival was approaching, and the town buzzed with preparations. Julian volunteered to help organize, hanging rainbow banners along the pier, but his thoughts were on Mathews. He'd seen the tailor at the shop, each encounter charged with unspoken words, but Mathews always pulled back, tethered by fear. Julian wondered if he was pushing too hard, or not hard enough. One evening, Julian found Mathews at the pier, staring out at the sea. The sunset painted the sky in pinks and golds, and Mathews looked like he was carrying the weight of the world. "You're avoiding me," Julian said, sitting beside him. "I'm not," Mathews replied, but his voice was strained. "I'm just figuring things out." Julian nodded, sensing the truth beneath the words. "When I came out," he said, "I was terrified, but hiding who I was hurt more than any rejection could. You don't have to have all the answers, Mathews. You just have to start." Mathews looked at him, his eyes searching. "And if I start, what happens to everything else? My shop, my family, this town?" "They'll still be here," Julian said. "But you'll be here too, really here." That night, Mathews walked Julian home, their shoulders brushing as they navigated the cobblestone streets. At Julian's doorstep, Mathews hesitated, then leaned in, his lips brushing Julian's in a kiss that felt like a promise. It was brief, tentative, but it set Julian's world ablaze. As Mathews pulled away, his smile was shy but real. "I'll see you tomorrow," he said, and Julian knew they'd crossed a line they couldn't uncross. The Pride Festival arrived, a riot of color and music against the backdrop of Port Haven's harbor. Julian stood at the center of it all, his heart racing as he scanned the crowd for Mathews. Would he show up, or had that kiss been a fleeting moment of courage? Mathews appeared, wearing a simple navy suit and the pride pin prominently displayed. The sight stole Julian's breath. They found each other amidst the chaos, and for the first time, Mathews didn't look away. They danced under the string lights, their hands entwined, and Julian felt the town's eyes on them. Some curious, some warm, a few sharp with judgment. But Mathews didn't flinch. Later, they sat on the beach, the festival's music fading into the crash of waves. Mathews opened up about his fears, his father's expectations, the whispers in town, the years he'd spent convincing himself he could live without this. Julian listened, his hand resting on Mathews, offering strength. "You're not alone in this," Julian said. "Not anymore." But the next day, reality crept in. A local, an old friend of Mathews' father, confronted him outside the shop, his words laced with disapproval. "You're throwing away everything," he said. Mathews stood tall, but Julian saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. The town's acceptance was uneven, and the weight of it threatened to pull Mathews back into silence. Julian faced his own doubts. Was he asking too much of Mathews too soon? Could love survive in a place where some hearts were still closed? He decided to give Mathews space, focusing on the wedding preparations, but each day without him felt like a missing stitch in the fabric of his life. The wedding day arrived, and Julian stood in his perfectly tailored suit, the one Mathews had poured his heart into. The ceremony was beautiful, but Julian's thoughts were elsewhere, on the man who'd made him feel seen in a way he hadn't expected. Where was Mathews now, and had he chosen to step into the light? After the vows, Julian found Mathews waiting outside the venue, his suit impeccable but his expression uncertain. "I couldn't stay away," Mathews said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, but I know I want you in my life." Julian smiled, his heart swelling. "That's enough for now," he said, taking Mathews' hand. They walked back to the reception together, the music spilling into the night. Port Haven wasn't perfect, and neither were they, but in that moment they were enough. The suit, a symbol of their connection, fit Julian like a second skin, each stitch a testament to Mathews' courage. As they danced under the stars, Julian realized that love wasn't about erasing fear. It was about facing it together. Mathews had started his journey, and Julian would be there, every step of the way, in a town that was learning to change, one heart at a time. Their story wasn't over. It was just beginning, and as the waves crashed in the distance, Julian knew that whatever came next, they'd face it side by side, with love as their compass.